This is Recovery Lifestyles with Carmel. Recovery Lifestyles is committed to raising awareness and ending stigmas surrounding addiction and mental health. On today's show, I'll be chatting with Merritt, who has a degree in psychology and currently works as a teacher, which she absolutely adores. Merritt has been in recovery since 2013 and knows the struggles that come with relapse. Following her relapse in 2018, she has searched for more ways to deepen her recovery and share in the recovery journey with others, which has led her to going public with her story in the hopes of connecting and not only helping herself stay alcohol-free, but helping others too. So, hey, Merritt, how's it going?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So I'm grateful to have you here today. You're coming in all the way from Waco, Texas, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm very excited to be here and talking to you.
Well, I'm excited too. And I just think it's so funny because I had no clue what Waco, Texas was until recently. And then so to meet, and then to meet you and be like, oh, you're from Waco, Texas. I totally know the whole, that's a big deal down there.
Yes, Waco is on the up and up. So hopefully I think it's growing, and I just moved here last summer, but I'm excited to see everything that Waco does, and I'm excited to be here and become a part of the recovery community here.
Yeah. So tell me, how long have you been a part of the recovery community or in recovery?
I started my own journey in recovery. I guess I had a few forays into it when I was in undergrad. But nothing really stuck or got serious until 2013. So normally when I talk about my story, then that's kind of where I pinpoint the start was really 2013 for me. So I had been drinking up until 2013, and then just kind of I reached a point in March of that year where things kind of came to a head and something had to give. And so I found a recovery meeting that worked for me at that time and got sober from alcohol. And that's when I started my journey.
Yeah. So was your journey more of like when you got into university and the whole party scene? Is that when you got caught up, or is it something that had started before that?
Definitely before that. So high school was a lot of drinking for me as well. College, obviously, that's a big part of the college scene, typically for a lot of people. And that's why I know for a lot of young people, especially, it can be very, very difficult. So in high school and in college, when I was drinking even heavily or to the point where it was obviously problematic looking back, at that time, since it is part of the party culture, then it can be very, very easy to just make an excuse like, we're teenagers or we're 20-year-olds, and that's just what everybody is doing. So my drinking started in high school and was a problem at that time, and then continued to be a problem in undergrad.
Yeah. And so what were the signs? What were the symptoms that were happening that made you realize that it was a problem?
I guess even when other people maybe were drinking in the same ways that I was, and that's why I kind of was able to say, oh, wait, I'm not an alcoholic because we're all doing the same things. My drinking was problematic for a couple of reasons. I know everyone in high school, well, I think that's a cop-out to say everyone in high school drinks. Not everybody in high school drinks. I think we like to tell ourselves everybody does it, but the reality, the statistics show that not everybody does it, high school or college. So I was drinking and my friends were, but that didn't mean that everyone else was too. And then just the ways that I interacted with alcohol where someone else might be able to have a couple drinks and have fun, that was never the end game for me. Like drinking a few was never an option. It was, if I had one, then I was going to drink until I didn't have a way to drink anything else. And definitely drinking at like odd times where, drinking on a Friday night may be pretty typical for anybody who parties. Drinking Monday before you even walk into class in high school is not normal.
Yeah.
So those should have been like very glaring red flags that I tried to push aside.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like there's an element of maybe wanting to fit in or seem cool. Do you feel like that was a part of it for you?
I know that that's a part of drinking for a lot of people. I don't remember specifically feeling that pressure. Definitely my friends drank as well, but I didn't. I, I guess perhaps maybe I was one of the people who was the instigators of the drinking, since I had that urge and that desire to be drinking so heavily. So I think that might be a reason that I don't specifically remember feeling very pressured, is because I definitely was the one who wanted to do that all the time.
Yeah. And so was it something that you were trying to attain peace, do you think? Like a sense of peace?
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. I do know that a ton of people who struggle with drinking or other addictions are trying to self-medicate something. And so, yeah, part of my story is definitely very typical for a lot of people in this world, is that, yes, had been diagnosed with, OCD as a child, and probably some of that was still holding on in my teenage years, and then also struggling with some anxiety, depression, and alcohol is just a very easy, albeit temporary, fix for that in the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like for myself, I have OCD as well, and so that can come with anxiety. So I
Yes.
get the idea. And when you're young, you just don't even realize what you're doing, or you just know that this was giving me relief, so I'm just going to keep going. But you don't realize the consequences that come afterwards. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I find it funny, as we've been getting to know each other, that you're highly educated in all of these behaviors, all of these, right? Like it's almost like you went out to study it. Like what is going on? I want to know deeper. Is there an element of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think definitely also just coming from, like, my parents are my dad is a psychiatrist. So from a very young age, I was exposed to that, and therapy was a totally normal thing in my family. Like, so I spoke of having OCD. I think maybe I was like 8 when I first went and got diagnosed with that. And so it was like not even a weird thing to be like, oh, you have OCD. That's totally okay. We're just going to take care of that. So that allowed me to explore the psych world as something that I'm interested in, and just view it as normal.
So I'm going to just kind of refer to something that we were talking about. I don't know, was it last week or this week? I don't even remember when we chatted last. It's been a crazy week. So do you think that sometimes when you have all the answers, like I know for myself, I can be like, I'm so aware. I know what's going on. I know what's going on. But there's like almost a little bit of denial. What do you think about that? Do you find
I think so, because there's...
Go ahead.
Sorry, continue. I think you're right. Like, there's definitely this huge difference and gap between maybe knowing textbook signs, like, yes, we can know what alcohol use disorder looks like in the DSM, but then to be able to flip that around and look at ourselves and actually acknowledge that we are participating in those behaviors can be a hard step to take. And being self-aware is definitely not the same thing as actually being able to put it in play. Like, I think a great example is I've done a lot in, conflict and working through problems with other people. And so definitely I would say that if you asked me just in the middle of the day right here, what's the best way to approach an argument or disagreement with somebody, I could tell you all these really great things. But then in the heat of the moment, when I'm in an argument with somebody, then even if I know I'm saying the wrong thing, it can be very, very hard to step back and actually do the right thing, for sure.
Oh yeah. I think that's part of life.
Yeah.
I could be in the most peaceful space, and my 3-year-old starts just going crazy on me, and it's very hard to keep that peace. So I can relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
So you stepped into the 12-step program quite early, but it was about 2013, you said, that you really started to work the program?
Oh, and so actually, interesting that you asked that question. So I am new to using the 12-step program, actually.
Oh, okay.
So the way I got sober in 2013 was through a different program. So I went to Smart Recovery, and that was very, very useful. And obviously, it did get me sober. So when I went into my first meeting in March of 2013 and started working that program, it's a lot more like cognitive behavioral therapy sort of tools to put in your toolbox for recovery. And that worked terrifically, and I met some great people. It's also, you know, you meet once a week, you talk to like-minded people, the same style as far as other recovery meetings, just definitely not a 12-step program like AA. And that worked, and it was wonderful. After about a year, then I just moved and I didn't find a new meeting. And so then I wasn't really working any program for the next 4 years. So that's when I actually ended up having a relapse last summer in 2018. And I was in Waco, and at the time they didn't have a SMART meeting here. So I just turned to the only other thing that I knew. I said, okay, AA is out there. So I joined AA. And actually I've been very, very thankful for that. So now in this like new sobriety that I'm working on now, I'm working the 12-step program. So got a sponsor right away when I got to AA here, and was able to work through that program. And now I'm just, you know, doing maintenance steps. So that's where I am at right now.
So what's the difference in your opinion of the SMART program and the 12-step program?
I think that SMART is a really awesome tool. And so actually I'm lucky that after I started AA here, then one of the local groups that I go to where there's an AA meeting in town, they actually started having a SMART recovery meeting as well. So now I do both, and I don't think that using one program means that you can't use any other program. Nothing is mutually exclusive, and recovery is such a journey, and all of our journeys are going to be unique. I mean, there's definitely obviously stuff that works for everybody, but you've got to find your specific mix up that will work for you. So SMART, definitely, you get in a meeting there, and they do actually allow like things like crosstalk and giving advice, stuff like that you don't really see in an AA meeting. So it can be very hard to switch gears going from one meeting to the other, but I think it's useful. And then SMART does really work more on like, in a meeting, you'd probably be going through like a concrete, working through a problem, like working through a cost benefit analysis about something that's happened in your life, versus in AA more, to me, my experience in AA feels more like anecdotal, and, you know, we focus on sharing just our personal experiences, strengths and hopes with other people, versus like maybe a step-by-step toolbox.
Okay, so is there, like in the SMART program, is there a spiritual aspect to it? Is that, or maybe that's the difference?
That's for sure the big difference. And I think what might draw some people to SMART is if they've struggled with the spiritual aspect that is integral to 12-step programs, is because SMART doesn't speak on that at all. So they just, that's not part of their program. So in their rules and guidelines, then they're very clear on that they don't, it's okay, whatever you want to do. And people will like talk about their own personal beliefs in SMART meetings, and that's totally fine. Just that that's not a part of their program.
See, I don't know how that would work, because the whole basis of the 12-step program, which is only what I know, is that you came to believe that there was a power greater than yourself that could restore you to sanity. So I'm just like, wow, that's, you know, that's pretty foreign for me. So yeah. So how has
I think definitely for a lot of people. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. So how has that affected your recovery, I guess, from kind of going from from the SMART program into the 12-step program? Like, did you have a belief before? Did you believe in a God? Was that a huge step for you?
This is a great question, because I think one thing that why I still bring up SMART to people, like I'll tell people about that was just the program that I used the first time around in sobriety. And it obviously did do something for me. Like I learned very useful skills, not just for drinking, but like for daily life. Like I used a lot of the things that I learned in SMART in interactions at work, with my boss. I can remember just very specific instances where I was like, oh wait, I can think about the ABCDE tool that I learned about in SMART and apply this to this work situation. So I think SMART has a lot of really awesome tools just for living. And if someone had been trying a 12-step program and they just were really struggling with the spiritual piece, then it could be an option for them. Like, okay, hey, if that's just really, you can't get past that hang up, then they could go try SMART.
Yeah.
For me, I'm really thankful that, so my relapse has been a learning experience. And I think one of the biggest things I realized was when I relapsed, I had been sober for over 5 years at that point. I had not been continuing to go to SMART at that point. So I hadn't been to SMART in about 4 years. I hadn't been doing any program. And then my relapse happened and it caught me very off guard. And I then realized that I actually didn't have a program. I didn't have I wasn't working anything in my day-to-day life to keep me sober. And that's why that relapse was able to happen. So I'm thankful that then I got into AA. And as I said earlier, like I now have a sponsor and did work the program, and I'm still working the program. And I'm not going to give that up because I think that is very, very important to my sobriety at this point. And I think I do need something. SMART provided me some really awesome tools, and I don't ever regret going to that. And I think that's why it's still useful to go to meetings sometimes. But for sure, I think I need that connection, that tap into the higher power, and that network that I have now in AA to maintain sobriety. And that was just something I had to learn through my relapse.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really important that we're talking about this today because relapse is, what is that? Is that your, do you have a
sorry,
dog?
My dog.
I was like, oh my gosh, what is that?
Sorry, yeah.
No, so what I was saying is I think it's really important that I'm grateful that you're sharing this today because relapse is a part of many people's programs. And if you can take that shame and that guilt away and just get back on track, when you look back, you can see like, oh, this was actually a really important part of the process for me. And because of it, I'm now here, or I now know this.
Yeah.
So for anybody out there that may be listening and they may be struggling, or they may be struggling with relapses, what would you want to say to them?
Yes, I think everything you said is exactly right. Relapse, I loved that you phrased it as it's a part of many people's journeys, because I've heard a lot of, I've seen some things recently where people say, you know, relapse is not an option. And that's the mindset that they have. And if you can hold on to that and tap into that, and that gives you the motivation to stay on your path, then I think that's really powerful and awesome. And like, I'm really impressed by people who do have like long-term sobriety and never had a slip up. But then also just acknowledging that while that's some people's stories, it's not going to be everybody's, and that relapse doesn't have to be game over. You're done. Sorry, that was your one chance.
Yeah.
I think if the moment we ever slipped up, then that was just the end. Like a lot of us would be out of luck, and that would be a terrible shame. So I think, yeah, acknowledging that nobody wants to relapse. You shouldn't be planning on it. You shouldn't go into recovery thinking like, okay, well, I got sober, but yeah, definitely a relapse is going to happen at some point. Like, for sure, I don't want to have that mindset. But you spoke about shame and guilt. I don't think we can get so focused on that it is absolutely unconscionable to even have a relapse or to think about the possibility of it happening. Then that would set you up to feel that shame and guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I also think that for my own self and my journey, when I relapsed, I found that every time I relapsed, it got harder. like going back out there, it got harder. And I just wanted to get back into the program as fast as possible, get back into what I was doing because it became more painful. So it kind of was a tool because it taught me that it never gets better out. It never gets better out there. Sometimes I know in the early days and early recovery, you can feel like you're really missing out on things, or all of a sudden your life is so boring, or you feel almost even left out, right? But what relapse taught me was that I actually am not missing out on anything, and it actually was more painful over there. So, you know, maybe it's boring in the beginning, but then as you recover and you gain a life and you learn more about who you are, your life opens up to something so much more, and you know that boredom kind of goes away. All of a sudden, you have a very full life again. Do you relate to that at all?
For sure. And I think one thing you touched on is in AA, they talk about how the disease is progressive. And they also have, these funny stories about, oh, yes, if you don't think you're alcoholic, then maybe go back out and try some controlled drinking.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think what you said is exactly right. Before, when I got sober back in 2013, I did that. I was 24 at that time. And so I had the chance to really, really screw my life up, but I hadn't done it yet. And so I was very lucky that I got into recovery, and none of those big ticket items like losing a job, losing a significant other, totaling a car, going to jail, none of those things had happened to me yet. And then I got in recovery and enjoyed this great sobriety. And then, yes, I wasn't back out for very long at all. And it was like very stunning. Just the instant you would think that like, at least I would have had like one day where I could have had like, I would have had no tolerance anymore, and I would have had just one drink and like nothing bad would have happened. Like, no, it was awful from the get-go. And so in my relapse is actually where I suffered like my most significant real life consequence to date. And so that was just, I went back out, and it is not any better. In fact, it was far, far worse. Like I was not only back where I had been before, but then I managed to go even further and just screw things up even more. I
know, you're like, I thought I was going to have fun. Thought this was fun.
So if anyone who thinks that and thinks like maybe my disease is gone now, like maybe now I'm changed, like nope, I checked and I am absolutely certain now. That you are correct. It is progressive, and it is baffling, and it is just a terrible thing. We don't want to go back out there, but if we do, then what you spoke to, getting back in as soon as we can to avoid those consequences, and to just look at that relapse and say, okay, I didn't want this to happen, but it happened, and so now what am I going to do, and how am I going to move forward from this in a productive way?
Yeah, those are powerful questions. I think too many times that when we do relapse and we're in that state, we just drown, right? We drown down into guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And we forget, hey, what's next, right? How am I going to recover? What am I going to do next? Instead of, oh, why me, into that whole, self-pity state that I think probably, I know for sure, makes things worse. So,
yeah.
So as we're about to wrap up, is there anything, I guess, left on your heart that you'd just really like to share with anyone listening?
I would just for sure reiterate those main points that we've both been saying, is that relapse comes, if it comes into your journey, I know that it can be very, very dark. The days after my relapse were very, very difficult to get through. I'm not going to lie. But realizing that you can move forward from it, and that there is the possibility that it happened for a reason, and you might not understand right now, but that later it's going to become a part of your story, so that maybe that's going to be how you can help somebody else and how you can relate to somebody else. And I'm glad that we got the chance to talk about the fact that there are other programs out there that might be helpful in building your toolkit up for your sobriety, but to make sure that you find what works for you. And I know that for me, over the last year since I've relapsed, being willing to open my eyes and my heart to this magical thing out there that connects all of us, and like tapping into that higher power and getting in touch with that, in conjunction with very useful practical tools I've learned has been useful. And so I think to be open to all the options that are out there, but at the heart of things, to know that you have to find what works for you. And definitely for me, and I know for a lot of people, then we can find that in the program, and with those real human connections that we make, like with our sponsor. I think I met my sponsor for a reason. And it's just been a real, like, she came into my life, and it's just been a really great journey.
Oh, love it. So if anybody listening would like to reach out to you, how can they do that?
I think the best way right now is, so I have Instagram, and that's what I'm primarily going to be checking and trying to network with people on. So I would love to find people on there. I've just been on there for a little over a month publicly, and there is a really, really terrifically strong and awesome sober community on Instagram, and it's been just terrific to make those connections. Yeah. I didn't know it was out there up until a month ago. I've lived in the private social media world, and so it's been amazing to connect.
Yeah, for sure. And so what is your Instagram handle?
Oh, you can find me at Real Rad Recovery. And that just spoke to the idea that, like, it's real, it's authentic. Like, I don't ever want to put up a front, and that recovery can be rad. You can have a lot of fun in it.
Awesome. So if you want to connect with Merritt, she's at Real Rad Recovery on Instagram.
Yes.
So yeah, reach out to her there. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. This was like an awesome conversation that needed, I don't think I've had a conversation surrounding relapse yet. So I believe that whoever is meant to hear this is going to hear this. And yeah, thanks for coming on.
I think they will, yes. And it's important that we just talk about all the different ways that your journey can look.